You're listening to the Let's Talk Marketing podcast hosted by me, Katya Allison. Now, what have you gotten yourself into? In short, it's going to be a good time. We're going to have a great conversation, and there's going to be a little bit of learning along the way. Now, through insightful interviews with top marketers, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders, I get to explore the latest trends, techniques, and strategies in the world of marketing. I'm here to offer you engaging and informative discussions to help you stay up to date on the latest trends and take your marketing skills to the next level. Now, in today's episode, we're diving in with my special guest, Daniel Schotland. We've got a jam-packed conversation where we're covering many topics, starting with email marketing. Believe it or not, despite the rise of social media, email still remains to be a powerhouse in the marketing world. Stay tuned and listen to why, but as a sneak peek, it's all about personalization, segmentation, and automation. Lots of shuns. We touched on influencers and its explosion, and this should be no surprise to anyone that's listened to the LTM pod before. But when it comes to influencers, we discuss authenticity and quality over quantity. And if that's not enough, we tie it up with a bow with storytelling. How effective storytelling goes beyond product features and benefits. It taps into emotions, values, and aspirations. So buckle up, Buttercup, and let's talk marketing with Daniel.
Daniel, welcome to the Let's Talk Marketing podcast. Super excited to have you on here today.
Thank you, Katya. Great to be here.
Absolutely. All right, let's dive into it. Let's have the audience get to know you a little bit. All standard questions, nothing to be scared of. First question, what was your first marketing role? Now, it could have marketing in the title, but I always think that the responses are really interesting. What would you define as your first marketing role?
Yeah, good question. I think my first marketing role really dates back to a company called Post Communications, which was a pioneer in email marketing. This was back in, oh gosh, date myself here. I want to say maybe 99, 98, 99, something like that. So kind of .com boom-ish, about to burst perhaps. My role was an engagement manager. So I myself had nothing to do with marketing, but as a solution, what we offered was email marketing to, some of the world's largest brands. And so everything from email newsletters to drip campaigns, to order confirmations, to promotions. And so started off there, and in fact stayed in email marketing for quite some time, taking on ever larger roles.
I think email marketing is completely under marketing for sure. And I also think it's one of these these digital marketing tactics that doesn't get enough hype. I think there's a lot of thought like, oh, this is old school, but it is in every business and brand I've been in, it is one of the highest converting. It's one of the highest converting tactics that are out there. I think there is well, I don't have the statistic, but I know that there is a statistic for like the value of an email address as well for a brand and that being a meaningful conversion point. But how interesting.
It is. I'm still, it feels like, everyone goes, email spam. No one, actually, especially, Gen Alpha, Gen Z, no one's into email. And that might be true when it comes to Gen Alpha. I think it's gonna be a bit of a concern because they really don't use it. Just looking at my kids as any indication, email's not their thing. But for everybody else, email still is a mainstay to how people communicate. And if done right, I'm a huge believer in the value of email marketing. And I agree with you. People look at it as old school, boring, not a valid marketing kind of tactic. But I do think it's one of, for brands that establish a direct relationship with their consumers or want to have a direct relationship with their consumers,
Yeah.
that and mobile together provide the best outlet to engage with your customers. So
No, I totally agree. I could completely go down a whole rabbit hole before I even hit question number two. So that's where you started. What is your current role now?
So my current role, so I am COO of a company called Linqia. We are an influencer marketing technology and services company. We've been around since 2012, so a bit of time. We were a pioneer in influencer marketing before influencer was ever really a thing. So back in the day, it was mommy bloggers to a very large extent, kind of driving the business. And we've always taken a very performance based approach to influencer and creator, i.e., how do we help really show that creators or
Mhm.
influencers can drive a measurable business result for a brand? And so our initial foray into it before my time, I've only been here 6 years, was really about a CPC based model for influencer. So fast forward to now, we are very much a normative kind of influencer marketing agency, providing strategy, service, and our own proprietary technology to really help major enterprise brands find the right set of creators from nano and micro all the way up to mega and celeb, uh, from short-term activations to long-term ambassadorships to really help inform the creative and the content strategy process, to activate kind of these creators at scale seamlessly, and then provide closed loop reporting, so that brands really understand how we're driving measurable impact and can optimize around it. And then the last piece, which is I think very interesting and honestly the future of creator to a very large extent, is leveraging the content that these creators produce and extending that value outside of organic and outside of social to programmatic online video, display, connected TV, and digital out of home. And so, really leveraging creator as the foundation to really fuel the entire kind of marketing strategy for a brand. So that's where I'm at now. And I'm COO. I oversee, all go to market functions and sales and biz dev as well as product and engineering. So, definitely a bit of a journey from my first foray into marketing back with post communications and email marketing, but super excited to be at the forefront with creator and all that comes with it today.
Yeah, I love the idea, and I say it's an idea because I don't know that everybody has adopted this way of thinking of influencer marketing being a programmatic play, which it definitely can be, and really looking at influencers as part of your content team. Like if you had 5 in-house people that are just kind of creating content, how do you leverage it? What do you do with it? I don't know that there is this huge turn around the corner up ahead, but I do think with, terms like content creator and ambassadors really taking more space in the space that people are going to, and brands particularly are going to really start seeing it as like a programmatic play, which would be really impactful.
I think it would be. It's slow coming. I think influencer or creator has meant so many different things to so many different brands, and even within a brand, I wouldn't say there's necessarily a single perspective or viewpoint.
Yeah.
The PR team thinks of it one way, the media team thinks of it as something else, the social team thinks of it as something else. And oftentimes it's kind of managed a little bit in a silo. And I think that's one of the challenges for brands and brand marketers is to really take a step back and go, is creator just a tactic or is it something bigger? And, a bit biased in the belief, but um, if you view it as the foundation, not just a marketing tactic, but as the foundation, boy, creator's really important to helping informed the product strategy, your branding, how you think about the type of campaigns and the right content to create that will resonate with your target audiences. How do you leverage them to create content and enable them to some degree be a spokesperson for you to authentically connect you with their audience, but also to leverage the great content creation capabilities that they have so that your ads, your paid dollars can drive really meaningful impact in a much bigger and better way than standard branded content. And I think time and time again, you see it, and we see it in our studies when you run creator-led content against branded content in display placements and in connected TV placements, even if it's not necessarily a social first creative or concept, it performs better. And I think the reason for that is one, oftentimes it's a creator you might know. It's attributed to a creator, even if you don't know them, it's a real person saying something. And so there's that like emotional kind of connection, right? We're all humans, so it humanizes it in some way. And the last piece of it is because creators are so good at understanding their audience and you can work across multiple, you don't end up with one hero asset after months of work with a creative agency. You might have 8 to 10 to 15 or whatever it might be, each speaking to a particular segment of the audience that you need to reach. So it's no longer one size fits all. And because of that, it tends to just do a better job in driving engagement and action.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Um, I know this is gonna sound silly. Now is question number 3. Uh, I promise I'm gonna synthesize these questions a little bit more. I mean, so we obviously talked about influencer marketing, you being COO. I would love to know what you love about what you currently do, but as long with the good, there is the bad. So if there was anything I could pluck out of your day to make it perfect, what would that be? So let's start with the positive. What do you love about what you do?
Well, one, I think I feel very fortunate at Linqia. We've built a really amazing team, work with great people. We have a bit of a notion and a cultural value, which is to create great experiences. And we think about that from the lens of how do we work with our brand partners? How do we work with our creator partners? And how do we work internally with within our own organization? And we're one of the only companies I know of that will actually turn things down and say no if we don't think it's going to create a great experience. And so, I take a lot of pride in the work that we do, and it's a lot of fun showing up and kind of doing that work. And because there's a focus on creating great experiences, right? It makes kind of everybody feel good. So certainly that's a huge positive, and creator has evolved so much and continues to. So it's exciting being part of an ever changing field. Just as we talked about, right? How does that content itself play a much larger role in addressing significant dollars for major brands? So love all of that, and the technology too is really fun. So we've really worked to build in AI kind of data centric approaches to find the right set of creators to understand what is the right content strategy that's going to resonate with your audience and a bunch of other things. So that's really fun. And being at the forefront of generative AI and kind of leveraging those insights to help auto create a brief, for example, for the creators. So doing some really cool and fun things. So a lot of positives there. On the flip side, um, I'd say that creator is one of those things, and I come from email marketing. I then did a stint with programmatic with a company called TubeMogul, fantastic ride, video DSP, in very core ad tech. As opposed to that, where every part of the buy can be navigated or moderated or automated by a software. Creator is a little different. You can use software, for a lot of it, but at the end of the day, that last mile is a bit of a doozy. And it is a group of people who have to take that concept, create their content, and post it. And that last bit means, boy, there's a lot of detail. There's a lot of subjectivity. You're dealing with people, which is great and sometimes challenge, and they don't always, people are people. Sometimes they forget that their content was due at a particular point in time. Sometimes they drank too much the night before and they didn't do it. Or no, I mean, I'm serious, right? Or they're like, yeah,
No, I laugh because it is
they're
so
people.
real.
They're
Yeah,
relatable.
I mean, it's so interesting whether we're talking about influencers or especially, I mean, you just brought up generative AI. I think there's this like mindset of, oh, these things are going to take over, or if I have an influencer or creator, then I don't need to do something. But you can never remove like the human element to everything that we do, right? Like it's almost like there's a way to streamline it up until that final mile to really like seal the deal with influencers and creators. It's that's where the relationship comes in, right? Like it's having that conversation. Like, did you have too much to drink today? Or not today, yesterday, like, what's kind of going on. So it's ironic that like there is such a worry that there's a worry that generative AI is going to take over. Then there is this mindset of like, oh, creators and influencers set it and forget it. It should be fine. Like I'm deploying to the masses and then I don't even have to think about it. But if it were that easy, then everybody would be doing it and doing it really well is the way that I look at it.
Exactly. If it were that easy, everyone would be doing it and doing it well. And they're not. Lots of opportunity for improvement.
There's a ton of room for improvement. And I think in order to really kind of view improvement, you have to kind of stay up to date on the trends. So I'm really curious, do you leverage social media networks for inspiration, education, or entertainment at all? And if you do, which ones?
Yeah. So, for sure, social media, influencer creator is continually evolving. Trends pop up, they die off. You have to consume social media. And these days, TikTok has kind of um, taught us to think about content in a particular way. And there are other social networks, obviously, and hopefully TikTok will continue to, to be an entity here in the U.S. I believe very very strongly it will, no matter what. But it's taught us to think a certain way, and a lot of trends start there. So you have to consume that content. And what makes that content so consumable in general is that it's entertaining. Right? It's relatively short, although there's a push for longer form content even on TikTok. So longer narratives, which makes sense, but it's entertaining, right? If you think about how TikTok took off, during the pandemic, uh,
Yeah.
it was it was dances, it was dance challenges, right? It was all about entertainment, people watching. It was fun, trying to emulate. And so that notion continues to exist. And a lot of the trends that come up are entertaining in some way. It's literally fun to watch. It scratches that itch you didn't even know you had. And you're seeing that translate to what happens in Instagram and on Instagram Reels in particular, and YouTube and YouTube Shorts. And so you're kind of seeing this. You're seeing this kind of export of a certain style and type of content, and it will continue to evolve. So certainly consume social to understand that. Also, at Linqia, we've got a fairly young team, and so we've got folks who are very digital social native. That's certainly not the way I was brought up. Facebook didn't exist back in the day. I still probably have a MySpace account somewhere, ashamed to admit, if it were a thing. And so, but so the folks that work here are very much like into the trends, and so being very close to them and understanding what's resonating with them, and just literally, walking around the office and hearing people talk about it. It's by osmosis. You kind of hear it and see it. So that's kind of another way that, I'm able to stay fresh with what's going on. And then I have kids. I've got three kids, ranging from 10 to 16. And they all consume social in very, very different ways. And so, I've got to be the cool dad. And so, I'm in there watching stuff with them, and we're commenting on things. And so that's another way that I'm able to kind of stay up to date as to what's going on.
No, I love it. I love it. It feeds into like the social and then like what else do you do to stay up to date on the trends for sure. I think one of the interesting parts about what you said was, the way that TikTok has, I don't want to say that it's kind of been at the forefront and has really been in the last few years, leading the way people are kind of consuming content, especially from like a short video perspective.
Yep.
I'd love to hear your take on this because what I also think that it is the drive for this kind of consumption and production of content is one that forces the person that's recording to be a really good storyteller, regardless of what they're telling the story of. Like, if I'm a comedian, that like that story building is like already built in. But I find that some of the creators that I watch, if I'm watching to the end, they have pulled me into their story. I have to know like this, I mean, it's amazing how long I will invest in someone's story. So I think that's been really interesting to see is like I don't know that we're looking at it in that way, but it's like we're birthing this like generation of really good storytellers.
Yeah, agreed. And I think people thought of storytelling not in one dimension per se, but there were maybe a few different lenses. It really was, especially in the early days of Creator 2, it was, hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm reviewing product X or product Y or product Z. And like that was a way of telling a story. It was in very, narrative, longer form. And there is still some of that, but that doesn't really fly. You gotta do it in
Yeah.
a different way. And so stories are told through sound, through motion, through image, through words, right? Through overlays, more than they are through narrative. That's not to say that narrative isn't part of it, but so much of it is like unspoken narrative. And I think that's really interesting as you get the sense of who this person is. Their personality shines through whether they're actually talking or they aren't. And what I think is interesting is you take a look at creators who kind of bubble to the top, they're consistent in their approach.
Yes.
Right? They're very consistent in their approach. And I think if you talk to them, which we have, and some of them have started, they started off making a certain type of content and didn't work for them. And so they moved on to something else. They moved on to something else. And oftentimes they're creating new handles along the way, reinventing themselves until they hit on something that truly resonates with their audience. And once they find that, then it's just, a rinse and repeat. So you kind of create a consistent experience for your followers.
No, I agree. And I love the fact that when you're talking about storytelling, it is that visual. What kind of comes to mind is my youngest is a cinematic arts major at CSUMB, and he's been putting together these videos. Yeah, since freshmen, first semester, they already started putting together these videos, and to see the evolution of his storytelling through, and there is no narrative on top of it. So, like when you said like the visuals, I'm like, oh, it's totally right. But he does do a ton of overlaying and the use of music to what he has visualized, and then the layer on top of what he's adding. Super fascinating, but you're right. It's visual, it's narrative. Either way, I think that people are really great storytellers at this point, which is kind of a segue for us because we are going to be talking about just kind of product storytelling. And when we take a look at products, I think there's this push and pull between, all right, I've got this product, here are all of the tech specs, and then here's the value proposition, and then translate it into a story that I can tell. I'd love to hear your thoughts on just kind of how do you translate that technical to create something like a compelling narrative that actually drives action?
Yeah. I think that, right, there's an art to it for sure. And it, a lot of times it starts with what is the problem we're actually solving? Like, what is the business problem? There's all sorts of amazing fun technology you could build. And Gen AI is one of those things. And you see this when you look at startups out there, just the explosion of these startups trying to attack different things where it's like, I got this cool new tool. I'm going to try and apply it to all these different areas to see what it does. Now, that's interesting. That's cool. Um, but what problem is it solving? Just because Gen AI is there, and you're applying it to something doesn't mean it's actually solving a problem anybody cares about. So to me, it's really, when you think about kind of product development and all the facets from, product management to product marketing to actual kind of engineering, it really starts with what is the problem that we are trying to solve? And if you're crisp about that problem, then I think the rest of it actually is very easy because that's your North Star. So I'll give you a great example. One of the things that we've put a lot of time and effort into, it's kind of a AI, Gen AI thing. We happen to use that because we believe that was the best way to do it. But the problem really was, okay, I'm a brand. I've got a new dog food that it's for older dogs who are on a diet. And I want to launch this, right? So I know I want to use creators in some way. For example, that's part of my strategy. What's the story I want to tell other than I know I want to launch this new dog food? Right? I don't know what's going to resonate. And so brands are oftentimes they have some notion of it, or their creative agency or someone has said we should do X, Y, or Z. But we said, well, that's interesting, but you don't know ahead of time what's going to perform well. What if we could leverage data around what is resonating on social today for that category, for something that's very similar to that? When people are already out there with their dogs who are older, what are they talking about? What are they doing? How are they portraying this? The health needs for their pets, for their dogs. Um, if we could analyze that, then we could leverage the data to help say these are the narratives that are actually driving resonance with your target audience. Here are the specific content attributes that you should include as part of that. And now you've got a data-driven approach to help inform the brief process. Now that's art and science. That's one of several factors. That's not the only thing that you should take a look at. But if we could do that, we'd have some real ammo behind an idea that we believe already knowing is going to perform well, rather than going, let's put it out there and we'll optimize from that point forward, right? Which is the traditional way of doing things. So we start with the problem of brands truly don't know what's going to perform. If we can leverage data to help them understand that, we could start our optimizations from a place of much greater performance. So that was the problem that we wanted to solve. And we said, how do we go about doing that? Well, we've got to take a look at all of social and understand around the particular area that a brand is looking to promote. New dog food for, older dogs on a diet. What's happening in social? Understand the narratives and what are those content components driving performance. And so then we said, okay, well, we understand the problem statement. Let's figure out what the technology that we're going to be able to use to go and do
Yeah.
all that. And it was combinations of AI and Gen AI to find it and to summarize and to look at differences between, posts that have dogs in it, for example, that perform well versus those that don't, and what's the core differences between that, the statistical significance of various things in the feeds and so on. So a lot of really technical mumbo jumbo, and you could get really feature heavy into how it works. But at the end of the day, the problem we're solving is, right, inform your creative brief, your content strategy based upon actual data on what is performing with the core audience you're looking to reach.
And what do you do? Well, first of all, that's incredibly fascinating, and I feel like such a hack because because my question is like, okay, well, that's great if you have that tool, but and especially for our listeners who don't have a tool like something like that, and I think traditionally it's set up to be engineering, product marketing, marketing, and you kind of have to like, it's this game of telephone of like, hey, this is the problem statement, and I think that engineers always start with a problem statement because that's what drives them. And then engineers and product marketing, product managers speak a very specific language with one another. And it's like it has to be translated down and translated down. Do you have some strategies for someone who maybe not doesn't have AI to be able to leverage that to help with the translation from one to the next to the next to the next?
Um, yeah. So kind of basic tenets, right? If we think about it in the life cycle of development of a feature or product or a solution or whatever it might be. Um, so benefits, not features. So it starts with, right. So from a like product management and product marketing, what's the benefit that we're trying to develop or we're trying to put in market, right? So if we can understand that, we can understand from market research, right, what the problem is. And then we can say, if we can solve that, what is the benefit to this person? That's kind
Yeah.
of step one, right? Step two is then being able to take that, and we talk about storytelling. So much of what we do on the product side of things is being able to tell a story of how what we're building is part of solving that problem, right? And if you're focused on the benefits of that, then you've got a good narrative, you've got a good story to tell. Um, and you need to bring kind of visuals into it. You need to be able to connect it to um, an emotion in some way, right? Like
Yeah.
this is a pain point for a customer, or this is a pain point for a particular user, or if you did this, this is the outcome, right? To get them excited. If you're able to portray those things and you're able to tell that story, we're all humans, whether you're into tinkering, with code, or you're into, something else, doesn't matter. Like that resonates with us. And so you need to be able to translate to, you need to be able to explain to the engineering team, the product developers, here's what we're trying to do. Here's what we're trying to accomplish. You want them to understand the pain point. You want them to connect with it just as much as your customer. But then from there, product's role is to translate that into all of the nuts and bolts and the features that need to be developed against those benefits or that benefit to enable, right, to enable the full solution. And then the product development team, then you talk about problem solving, they go, crap, that sounds really hard, right? Those are five different things we need to build. how do we go about building this? How do we do it in a scalable way? And that's their expertise, is then figuring out the actual technology to kind of, to build all the componentry that enables those feature sets that then translate ultimately into benefit. So, um, I think those are kind of the core tenets of how you do it. I think that the roles, right? So it's solid, very good collaboration between
Mhm.
product marketing, product management, and product development. They've got to work together as a team. Doesn't matter how they report in any organization. It's like a three-sided coin, or I guess, the typical analogy is a stool, right? It's three legs of a stool.
But a stool is probably more appropriate for that. I don't know that there's a three-sided coin, but I was picking up what you were putting down.
Three-sided dice. I was thinking Dungeons and Dragons, from way back in the day. Um,
Oh, I like that reference. That's hilarious. What I think is interesting about the way that you're describing it is that, when you originally were talking about it and we introduced this idea of AI, which is a kick-ass solution, honestly. Um, and then we break it down to those tenants. It feels like when in order to execute this kind of breaking down of the technical into like what this narrative is almost requires this consistent up and down, or it's probably not up and down. It's more sideways, right? I think a lot of times people get lost on like, okay, engineer, product marketing, marketing, and then out into the public, and then we shall never speak again. But I do think in the way that you're describing it, you actually described like, from the right to the left, to the left to the right, to the right to the left, to then a little bit more in the middle, and then to the left, in order to actually hit the nail on the head when it comes to, like, the customer.
and I think that's right. It's not an assembly line.
Yes.
And I think some product orgs try and work that way, and it's efficient. I'm not sure it really develops the best and the right products, because at the end of the day, you're getting constant feedback. You're making sure there's alignment, and
Uh-huh.
we've seen it. I mean, we're relatively small org. We're not Google, at least not yet. And as we start translating things, there's some engineer who hears it one way, even though there might be a very clear spin. It's not their fault, and they're kind of off and running. And so it's constantly bringing people back together, realigning them to, here's the North Star of what the actual benefit is. Let's make sure every piece of it actually maps to that, and does it in a way that, we care about scalability, we care about quality, we care about our ability to support it. We care about the customer's ability to use it and the user experience. So it all has to fit together. It's a multifaceted, kind of process. And so, to your point, it generally doesn't run in just a single direction.
Yeah.
It goes back and forth, and it iterates, as you work towards actual release. And then once you release, it doesn't stop there.
Yeah.
Uh, then you go, great, right? We had some assumptions we made. Maybe we didn't get it exactly right. So taking that market feedback and real user experience as you start to scale and be able to iterate upon that is quite frankly just as important, if not even more important, than the initial launch.
Which just goes to show you, you can't be a perfectionist in this world when it comes to business. You really do have to have this MVP, because once it's out there in the wild, it's gonna give you the feedback that you need to, like, really hone in on whatever product, whether it's, like, a hard product or, like, a soft product of, like, all right, this is actually what the market really wants. And this is actually the more impactful feature, which I think you can, as a brand and, behind the curtains, you can iterate so many times. I can sit here and be the queen of assumptions of what the public is going to say, but that at the end of the day doesn't really like develop the right product for my particular audience. I couldn't agree more with you.
It's almost like, the whole Apple thing with Steve Jobs. To a large extent, you have a sense of what this problem is, and you could do user research all day long, and that's important. I'm not suggesting that anyone skip that step. It's really important. But at the end of the day, until you put something out in the hands of users and understand how they use it and what problem it truly solves, you really don't know. And oftentimes users aren't going to tell you, right? The iPhone, no user said, oh, I really need, I like my iPod, but I wish I could make phone calls on it, or I wish I could browse the internet on it, right? I mean, I don't think anyone said that. So someone said, "Hey, this is something that seems like it's cool. Let's get it out there and see what people think,
Yeah.
and go from there." It was a big bet, and it paid off. And I think that's part of it is we got to be comfortable at, putting together things that work just enough for users to use them, and we understand how and where it truly fits, and then we capitalize on it and build on it from there. And I think that's the best way to really create a product that's going to differentiate, disrupt, and drive either efficiency or productivity for your user.
So we've talked a lot about like just kind of product development and product iteration, as well as like breaking down the technical to build out that narrative to bring to the market. I do have a couple of final questions for you. I won't pretend like it's just going to be one. But one of the questions is more from like the marketing side of it. There's a lot of conversation about this difference between upstream and downstream marketing. How do those work together? How do those work together? And maybe what do you see as the breakdown of like what's upstream marketing and what's downstream marketing, and whose role and responsibility is that?
Yeah. So I think product marketing sits in the center, right, of upstream and downstream, and their job is to help kind of coordinate and provide. So upstream, right, is kind of the market research and understanding what the market needs and helping understand what that problem is. And they're collaborating oftentimes with the product org around that, right? They product org might be doing the research, but product marketing is sitting there listening and understanding and figuring out how to take these pain points and say, here's a solution that we could package in a way that's going to make sense based upon those pain points and the target audience that we're looking to reach. And so I view that as kind of upstream kind of marketing activities. It's really more research driven. And then from there, right, all the product stuff happens. And then the product marketer's role is generally to coordinate with all the downstream marketing, which could be part of your branding, could it be part of your campaign launches and all that stuff to say, okay, now that we've created this product or we are creating this product, what's the story we can tell in the market? How do we ensure that our target market is going to hear it, they're going to see it, they're going to be compelled by it? How do we draw that emotional connection to the product in a way that is kind of, whether it humanizes it or not, really um, causes someone to stop and go, okay, this is interesting. I need to learn more about this. And so again, sitting in the center, I think product marketing's role is to help see and coalesce the upstream marketing activities and coordinate with the product team around that through the development process. And then
Yeah.
as you figure out what that product is, working with downstream, their downstream counterparts to make sure we can create campaigns, we can update our website. We can think about how this product helps. Is it a new um, tip of the spear for our brand, depending upon what the brand is, or does it support it in some way? And how does it support it? Their job is to help make those connections so that the folks who are updating the brand and brand messaging, who are creating the sales enablement materials, who are creating the campaigns themselves, who are updating the website, all of that good stuff, are creating marketing materials so that they have what they need to be able to produce what they need to produce.
I love it. That's exactly the way that I see it broken down. So there's nothing like being validated, I guess, and like that breakdown of the upstream and the downstream. Well, because I do think like oftentimes it depends on like what brand you're at and like how people view things. And every brand is slightly different, right? Like sometimes product marketing doesn't sit in product, sometimes it sits in marketing and vice versa, right? And sometimes it's completely independent of itself and it has its own like beast, which is fantastic. But again, we go back to what we were originally talking about, how it's not one way. It's not an assembly line. It's got to go back and forth in order for it to be seamless, because you've got to, you know, it's got to go back and forth in order for it to go out. And then once it goes out, it goes back and forth again. So I'm right there on the same page with you. And as promised, that was not the last question. I do have a final question for you, and hopefully I've given you enough time to think this through. Okay. So this is, if you knew then what you know now, what is the marketing advice that you give to yourself?
Um, don't sweat the small stuff. So it's easy, especially as a marketer, um,
Hmm.
to be into every little detail, and you want it to be just right. You want it to be perfect. Um, And there is no such thing in life or marketing as perfect. Sometimes good enough is what you need, just like everything you do. Marketing is an iterative process, right? You start with a campaign, you start with an ad, you rebrand whatever it is you're doing. You could take months to get it exactly right and then realize you still didn't get it right. So don't take months to do it. Get it good enough, put it out there, and I think early in my career, certainly, it was hard to feel okay with that, knowing that it could be better than it is um, today. But I do think I've seen over time that perfect is the enemy of good, or good is a perfect. I forget what the right saying is.
I'll look
But
it up after.
but in either case, the point is, I think like we got to test and learn. And that means there is no such thing as perfection. And sometimes don't sweat the small stuff, don't sweat the details. Adopt a test and learn mentality, and you'll get where you want to go much more quickly.
I love that. That's sound advice that I will take with me to the bank. I want to thank you so much for giving me so much of your time. This has been thoroughly enjoyable, and I appreciate all of the knowledge bombs that you dropped on us today. Thank you again so much.
Thank you, Katja. Appreciate it.
There was a lot we really dove into this episode. So let me go straight to my key takeaways. And of course, per usual, I have three of them. The first key takeaway from this episode for me was the power of email marketing, a time tested channel for marketing. It's a bit of an unsung hero in the marketing world, quietly delivering impressive results while newer, flashier tactics kind of steal that spotlight, right? I've witnessed firsthand the enduring power of email to engage and really convert customers. In an era of fleeting social media trends and algorithm changes, email still remains a reliable channel for establishing kind of this direct to consumer relationship and nurturing them over time. And it's not just about blasting out generic messages. It's really about crafting personalized communication that speaks directly to the recipient's needs and interests. Despite its age, email does really continue to evolve with innovations like automation and segmenting, making it really an effective tool. And we're living in this world where there is this constant noise. Email marketing has the ability to kind of cut through the clutter. You have to do it right to cut through the clutter. So it's not, again, the generic email, but you can cut through the clutter with it, delivering messages straight to the inboxes where they're more likely to be seen and people are more likely to take action on them. It's really a testament to the timeless value of personalized communication in this kind of increasing digital world. You just kind of have to segment it, right? Develop your own algorithm. Now, key takeaway number two, influencers. Influencers as strategic partners specifically. Now, influencer marketing has really come a long way from its humble beginnings as just sort of this trendy marketing tactic. And actually, I could probably do a whole episode of like truly the beginning of influencer marketing. Let me know if that's something that you'd like to hear and or learn about. But anyways, as brands just kind of have recognized that genuine connections influencers forge with their audiences, these individuals have really evolved into an integral component of a strategic marketing initiative. From nano to mega influencers, brands are recognizing the value of partnering with content creators who can authentically represent their brand and really engage in that target audience, their community. But it doesn't stop there. The real magic happens when brands leverage influencer content programmatically across the multitude of digital platforms. It's influencer marketing and content marketing, right? There is an intersection where it can be a real powerhouse. It's a powerhouse on its own, but like when you combine the both, man, watch out. by extending kind of that reach and the impact of influencer content beyond organic and social channels to programmatic online video, display, even connected TV, believe it or not, and sort of digital out of home platforms, brands can really maximize the value of their influencer partnerships and amplify their message to a wider audience. It's not just about these one-off activations anymore. It's about building these long-term relationships with influencers and integrating their content seamlessly into your brand's overarching marketing message. My final key takeaway: storytelling. Storytelling in product development, which is a little different in the way that we've talked about storytelling before. This take is really interesting for me. Connecting storytelling in product development and the thought of it being a fundamental component that just kind of drives innovation and consumer engagement, beginning with identifying the problem to solve, a pivotal moment where storytelling kind of intersects. That's my word of my outros today. But it is this pivotal moment where storytelling intersects with product ideation by crafting a narrative that really just kind of articulates how the product addresses a specific pain point or fulfills a need. Brands can really create a compelling storyline that resonates with consumers, the end user, on a much deeper level. This narrative thread doesn't end with the launch of a product either. It really just kind of continues to evolve, guiding the product's journey as it navigates just this market landscape. Storytelling and product development isn't just about selling a product. Get away from the feature wars, am I right? But it's about creating an immersive experience that really captivates consumers and fosters this brand loyalty. We really want to drive people to not just take action, but also we want to make our brand sticky, right? Understand the importance of weaving narratives that kind of evoke emotion and inspire action. And in the realm of product development, storytelling serves as the linchpin that bridges kind of this gap between innovation and consumer adoption. Now, what did you walk away with from this episode? Leave it in a review or slide it into my DMs. A special thank you to my podcast producers, the amazing team at Content Allies. And thank you for spending your time with me today. Until next time, may the conversation flow, the laughter linger, and the outlook remain optimistic, but grounded in reality. This is Katya, signing off.